This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, hello friends. Today we will be reviewing AWS documentation, and so let's go straight to this thing. Go to https aws.amazon.com. Go to documentation and click on View All Documentation. Today we would be reviewing EC2, and we would go on the user guide for Linux instances, and let's go into the HTML version. So what is the EC2? EC2 is the Amazon Elastic Cloud, which is like in a general terms is a server where applications are hosted. And these are the features of EC2, in which it says like it's a virtual environment. It has a pre-configured template known as an Amazon machine images, various configurations, secure login, storage volumes are there. Then you have a persistent storage, which is called EBS volume. And then you have a firewall which can allow you for inbound and outbound. You have a static IP address for dynamic cloud computing, which is also called elastic IP address. You have a metadata tag which you can create and assign to Amazon EC2 resources, and then those can be accessed. And then these are created inside a VPC, which is like a virtual private cloud, and I'll discuss more about that thing later on. And then there is a section how to get started with Amazon EC2. So let's go straight to here. So you have a two-way to access Amazon EC2 once it is up and running. One is through the command line interface, AWS command line interface. Another is through the AWS tools for Windows cells. And then there are four options for pricing, which is like on demand. So you pay by second as you use it, and there is no long-term commitment. And or do you do an upfront payment? Then there is a saving plans. This is when you enroll for 1 to 3 years, and you get a lesser rate, compared to what you got for on demand. Then there are reserved instances which you paid upfront for 1 to 3 years, and then there is a spot instances which are like unused EC2 instances, and those are being available to you, and these are get released when there is another demand. Okay, so this is PCI DSS compliance. What it means that the EC2 instances are compliance with the industry payment card industry standards. So yeah, now there is a difference between instances and AMIs. AMIs are basically like your ISO files or any image of already pre-configured softwares or servers, and then you access this and create your running instances. So instances are basically like, it's the server processes which combined all together to give you a feel of, a server. So yeah, so if you see here, this is your instance. These are the multiple instances. This is the AMI. So for this A1 AMI, you can, with this one AMI, you can have multiple, instances in a different region, different zone. So this helps in this way. Okay, so let me remove this. Okay, so there is like, the instance can be booted by a boot file system which is already a part of instance, or from a EVS volume, which is like a sort of a SAN storage in a typical setup. And so generally like Amazon recommend or AWS recommend to boot your system from the EBS backend system, so it will be faster, and your data remain in safe. So then there are security best practices is like you use IMI control, you restrict allow only trusted host, disabled password login instances, and then you review your security gifts parallelly. So then you have a concept like stopping an instance. It's like, basically when you shut down your laptop, this is called stopping an instance. And when or other way, let's say you have a VM on your system and you are just stopping it, so it's stopping. And when you say terminating, so here it means like you're actually wiping out everything. So AMIs are, Amazon machine images. Some are provided by the Amazon itself with the pre-configured steps, pre-configured configuration, and some are from the other people like me. I can also have my AMI created and rehost in the Amazon and then get it launched in the workplace. But yes, the thing is like I need to pay for the resources. Then the concept of reason and a zone. So reason, what you say, like, for an example, um reason is like, say you have a seven continents, which is like US, Antarctica, Asia, Europe, Australia. So these are called five regions. And now in these five regions, you have your data center. So in US, it could be in a Denver, it could be in a California, it could be in a New York. So these are called availability zones. Same in India, you can have it in Delhi, you can have it in Mumbai, you can have it in like Kolkata. These are called zones. Same way. So that's what the concept is for this thing. And though in these regions are, uh, characterized based on, let's say, if it is an eastern part, US East 1, US West, something like this. So if you see the definitions here, Amazon EC2 is hosted in multiple locations worldwide. These are composed of region, availability zones, local zone, wavelength zone. Each region is a separate geographical areas. Availability zones are multiple isolated locations within each regions. Local zones provide you the ability to place resources such as compute and storage. AWS outsource bring native AWS services. Wavelength zones allow to build applications that deliver ultra low latency to 5G devices and end users. So wavelength is another zone which AWS created for 5G networks. So those are customized to those areas of functionalities. Okay. Then there is a list of zones, which is, so it is said like when you work, it is not always recommended, but US East 1 is the first zone which was created. And then, one can refer here for all these details. And so, the thing is like, yeah, so this is the URL, which is like standard. And if you see it here, this is what it is. Then you have to first create it here. So whatever, you go and see it here is already in a documentation. So we can save the time here. So the instructions are pretty much similar. So on the right hand corner, you have the region selector, then you have the EC2 dashboard. And so there is a way, if you're using the AWS CLI, which is like command line interface, you can use this. So there is a way. So like you can install these CLI in your local, get your account created here, and do the authentication. Okay, and then you can go with this command line. So either way one can go, and commands are easy, not that something you just need to remember. And so yeah, in some other video we'll go how to install AWS CLI. And so yeah, and same for if you want to use a window PowerShell, these commands are self-explanatory, and there is nothing, so you just need to understand this. And there is a help command. When you type ASW AWS light shell and then help, it get you all the details. Okay. Okay, so moving on. So I said like in a US, it could be Denver, it could be California, it could be in New York. So this is your availability zone. Okay. And you can do the same thing using the AWS command line tool. And the commands are pretty much simpler. So just first see what are the availability zones, and then you give your region's name and all those things, based on the query. You can actually first get the, yeah. So basically you have to get the region name from here, and then you have to describe it. It will give you the availability zones, and then those availability zones can be used to, create your EC2. And there is a way, let's say you wanted to move your instance to another availability zone. So this scenario happens, for an example, that I have a project where my database is running on a New York and my app is running on a New York. So I migrated all the application end to end on the New York side. And after that, my things went good, but there were some architectural changes, and this was decided to make the database move to California region. So ideally, that does not happen, But let's say for an example, and my app is still running onto the New York region. So, and definitely, like, if you're in the same data center, your speed will be, you will get a better performance compared to if your one backend is in California and the front end is in New York. So then the things comes, like let's move the uh, app server running in the front end, running in the New York to running on to the California. So here, this is a concept comes which is called migrating an instance to another availability zone. So there is a way how to do it. So what do you do? Like, you just create a dummy AMI, from the instance. Then yeah. So then you create an Amazon EBS backend. Then you're going to create a similar instance in the California region based on what is running onto the New York region. Okay. First step is that. So yeah. So now it says if you now want to keep the same private IPv4 address, then you need to delete the subnet in the current availability zone and create a subnet in the new availability zone with the same IP address range as the original upset. Note that you must terminate all instances in the subnet before you can delete it. Therefore, you should create AMI from all the instances in the subnet. You move all in on the current subnet. So the point is like what they're saying, like if you wanted to keep the same private IP. So what does the private IP means? Like, that right now what is happening, what happens in general scenario, that you will get a host name, and behind that the IP address can be changed. So generally this is the normal industry practice. But there are some times when the IP address are hard coded in the application based on the architectural, they need to keep the same IP address. So in this case, definitely you cannot have the same IP address for the two devices. And so in this case, what they are saying that in order for you to, if you want to create the same IP address, you have to first terminate your instance, or basically get the IP address released from there and assign it to the new instances. Okay. Then once you have already created all those things, you can launch your AMI that you just created, and yeah, simply once you created, you got your IP address, launch it, make a connection, and start working on it. So you have a local zones. So basically, what it has happened, it is like a extension to your own this thing, and so the thing is like it helps you for the low latency communication. So what it means, like even if you're seeing some slowness, uh, you would be okay. But yeah, for an example, okay, what is the real type scenario for this? The real time scenario is like if you are having a web-based application facing a customer, you will definitely not like even a single second of latency. But let's say you have some night job or report job which runs in the backend and which does not have any, end user, you would see, okay, let's go to the local zones and get some, pricing control rather than, getting it here. So if you are, let's say, subscribed for one of the instances to in order to run your reportings, and you don't want it, so let's say that costs you like $2 per hour, so this will cost you 50 cents per hour. So you will definitely think, hey, let's go to the local zone, because even if it is complete in 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I need to see the result of the other day. Okay. And then you have in the local zone different types of things, like you have a you can host your EC2 instances, EVS volume, FX file server, load balancers, dedicated host. Then let's come to. So once you create an account, so what is an account? An account is something when you create an AWS account by clicking here, you provide all your details and you put it continue. They take your credit card, they give you an account number, and then based on that account number, you can actually check um, or what the service you subscribed, while doing the sign up. You can have the list of the regions which are available for. So region is the first thing, where you need to get in, and then you have to, check what are the availability zones inside this, and then you check it. So let's say US is one region, and this US East one is the one availability zone. EU is the one region, and EU East is the another availability zone. So basically, like, straightforward. There is no technical things here. So once you go it here, you have an options of flexibility, which one you want to use it. So quite naturally, if you want to use the local zone, you have to opt in first, and that is the way you go it. And then there is a way for going through the AWS CLI. Then launching, you launch an instance, you know. So what happens, like by default, you will have an IPv4 address, and IPv6 comes later on. For IPv4, you can decide what is CIDR is. And this is something very important for any AWS enthusiast. The networking part, they need to know this terminologies, OS models, because if you don't understand those things so fluently, it is difficult as a solution architect, to design any solutions. So, I'll go with those, not today, but yes, that's something important. I'll do it. And IPv6 address are assigned by Amazon directly. You are like, we do not have a control on it. We can't choose the IP address of it, but it will be auto assigned. Yeah. So you can have a both of these IPs, but IPv4 comes by default and is a mandatory. IPv6 is optional. You can have both of these, and the request can be further gone. Okay. So then there's a WebLAN zones. So it's the same thing, you have a region, you have a VPC, and then your instances and all the services are designed to cater the basically the telecommunication network, which is like a 5G. So on conceptually, those are like same thing, and you have to follow the same process. The only thing what changes in this in the instance wise, what kind of the instance will be available. So there are instances like for an SAP, they are like memory intensive. So you have to choose the memory intensive instances. Then there are compute intensive, which is like OLTP or data warehouse. You have to choose according to that. Then, so there are different types of uses the way we today digitally we connect, and there is a different way, these things require. Some are like CPU intensive, some are like IO intensive application, and so one need to analyze those things, and some are like there is a peak time for first 4 hours, then there is a slowness. So you have to further consider how you are going to auto scale these things. So yeah. So what there is a concept called AWS Autospots, which is like a fully managed service that extend AWS infrastructure, services, API, and tools to customer premise. So, so what is happening? Like, AWS is a fully managed service. So, what if somebody subscribe for it, and I'm sitting at my home and I subscribe for it? I do not need to do anything. I'll be given access to those premise over a VPN, and AWS team will take care of it. Yeah. So, okay. So these are the commands. I would suggest like one should be aware of these commands. So what happens like when you become if you want to automate something, or if you want to make your work more smoother and you're handling so much of the things, you can actually administer the AWS the way you used to administer if somebody is a system admin through the Linux, through the PuTTY and all. So it gives you more fastest access, and web-based is always there, but yeah, so it's like a personal preference. Both of these kind of will achieve the same thing. Okay, let's move to the root device volume. So what is the root device volume? So the root is like, when you go to the Linux instance, you df minus h, you see a slash root. So basically that is the root device volume. What it contains? It contains the image used to boot the instance. So you need some OS right files to boot it, right? And so there are two ways. You have a two option. Either you have your AMI backed by EC2 instance storage, or by backed by Amazon EBS. So what does that mean? That on the EC2 instance, you will have a root file system, which is a part of that instance server. There are OSs. Other is you will have your server. On that server, your EBS volume is attached, and you have your OS, all the configuration on this EVS volume. So what is the benefit of it? The benefit is, let's say you want to move to another zone and you have your all thing in EVS volume. You just need to plug and play, or basically you can make a copy of it. You can just plug it, simple, without affecting your existing instance which is up and running. But here in this case, you can still do the same, but yes, you have to have 4 or 5 steps. And then when you're taking a copy, you're definitely consuming some computing power, right? Here you can do it behind the scene. You will still consume, but you won't be consuming the running instance. And so Amazon suggests that you go with Amazon UPS because they are launch faster and use persistent storage, basically like a SSD, you can say. Yeah. Then there is a concept. What it says, let's try to understand it. Instance stored backed instance. This is AMI, Amazon S3, which is so the Amazon machine image is stored in one of the bucket inside the Amazon S3. This is my host computer, and yeah. So basically, here this whole is my host computer, and this is my instance name, which is like ephemeral 01 0 1 2 3. So I have a 4 servers which are created from AMI instance 1 2 3 4, and on these one I have this local file system, block storage, devsd1, devsdh, 1hjb. In one of these files, which is like this one, as per the image, I have my OS file system stored. Okay, now let's go here. Amazon EBS backed instance. Same thing got created from AMI bucket S3, have the same mount file system, but the files on this file system are mapped to the EBS volume, correct? So these are just the content here are being referred to these locations, and on these servers same thing happens. So this is what the difference is. So if I remove this or terminate this, I have this. Now since this can be used by this one of these, I can still have a copy of this while this is running and I'm not touching any computing here. I can still do this and I can replicate it. But here, if I had to do this, I have to use the computing of this, then I have to move it to some external file system. From there, I need to move it. So I still will have to go this way or this way based on the size and all. But somewhere, in practice, we don't do it because we always want to create an instance from the image, which is persistence. I mean to say in a sense like which is not changing and it is intact, and we can have a backup based timing, and we can decide when to you know take it. So it says, let's say if for Amazon EBS backed instance fail, you can restore your session by following one of these methods, which is like start and then stop and then start again. So that is the first part. If that does not work, then automatically snapshot all relevant volume and create a new AMI. Then you attach this volume, create a snapshot of the root volume, then you register a new AMI using that snapshot, launch a new instance from the new AMI, detach the remaining Amazon EBS volume, and then reattaches. Then you have an option, how you can take the boot devices here. This is like a straightforward, and same here, how you do it. So this says like what I was saying, like when you terminated, when you the root volume of the AMI backed by deleted when the instance. So this Amazon EBS is not deleted, but the root volume is deleted. Okay. So you can still make it root volume to persist during the instance launch. And yeah, and there is a command for this, and this is the JSON file system. Okay, so basically you need to understand the terminologies, and then these are the command which you basically follow. These are specific to AWS, and you have to follow the same way, you know. And these are this thing. So let's move to the next topic, what is setting up. So you have to sign it for the AWS. The way you go hit here, uh, yeah. So then you create a key pair. So what happen? What is the importance of this? Is like, you create a key pair, and there is a one set of a key which is called the private key. You know, so this is given to anybody who need to access it. So the person do not need to remember the password, and yeah. So it says like it has no password. You use a key pair to log in securely. Okay, so create a key. Then when you want to connect, provide this key. And this is the steps. So you log in that simply. Then you create your security group. So what is the security group? Security group is, the feature which protects your instance basically by deciding what kind of the traffic can come in and what is traffic can go out. So parallelly, this is okay, but there is another thing which is called NCL, which is like network, and ACL, which is a network access control list. What it does, it protects your subnet. We'll discuss what is a subnet. So basically, protecting a subnet protects your instance as well. So there is an option. How do you do the new console, old console, and the command line? You can go anything. So yes, there is a few difference, but pretty much it's remain the same. So there are, so what I was saying, like it acts as a firewall for associated instances, controlling both inbound and outbound traffic at the instance level. So you have this is a prerequisite. You need to add rules to your security group to enable you to connect to your instance from your IP address using SSH. You can also add rules that allow inbound and outbound HTTP and HTTPS access from anywhere. So it says if you're launching your instances in multiple regions, you will need to create this thing different. So naturally, like, just think about in a way I created one instance in US, one in India, and then I need to configure it. So logically those are separate things, but by virtue of this rules process thing, we connect them, and on the map we saw, okay, this is my front end apps are hosted across the US or across the world, but logically those are separately, right? So you connect by rules, and with the ping, if I'm able to ping, I'm able to establish the network. Okay, so this is the way you open your console. You go to the navigation bar, select the reason for your security group space. So basically, what it says, you should create your reasons in which you created your key pair. So basically, the reasons where your EC2 instance was created. In the navigation bar, choose the security group, create a security group, give the basic detail. If you want to allow HTTP from anywhere, put it this. If you want to allow HTTPS, you have to drop down, you have to select, and then you have to put this. Then you can, for this is for inbound rules. What are the inbound means? What are the requests can come inside the instance? And then there is an SSH for that. So basically there are different type of protocols on which the communication can happen. So one of these three are HTTP, HTTPS, SSH. So beyond all this drop down, you have to put, you can also exclusively put, okay, just allow ping over the HTTP on this. So for an example, I have an application, let's say www.abcd.com, HTTP www.abcd.com. Its IP address is, let's say, 10.2.6.8. Now from this application, and my instance IP address is 10.3.5.8 for an example. Now from first 10.2 to 10.3, if I want to access, I have to go and I can exclusively give that particular IP can only be accessed. So I mean, how will I access? I have some utility and I configured my application in a way where I'm uploading some file, it goes directly to my instance. So behind the scene, it has to ping that the authentication will happen and my and then the transaction request will complete, right? And same for HTTPS. SSH is generally used for um,